guys, it's Ty and welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to go ahead and review two of the most recent books that I have read by the author TJ Klune. And the book that I'm going to start off with first is one of his most popular books that have been circulating around here on BookTube the last year or so that I finally was able to get to, and that is The House on the Cerulean Sea. And this story, if you haven't heard anything about it, is about our main character by the name of Linus Baker, who is a caseworker at the department in charge of magical youth. And so basically, Linus goes around to different orphanages that houses magical children, and he is supposed to investigate these children to make sure that they are, I guess you would say, deemed safe for the public. And so one day he is actually summoned by the upper management, and he is supposed to go to this secluded house that houses these six really dangerous children. And he is supposed to actually go there and spend a month there. And during his month, he is supposed to send a weekly report to the upper management about his stay there, and give them a report at the end of the month and tell them whether or not these children are in fact as dangerous as the upper management think that they are. And the story pretty much takes off from there. And while he is there for the month, he is, like I said, spending all of his time there. He is living at this house. He is monitoring these children during their daily activities. He is spending time with their primary caretaker, which his name is Arthur Parnassus. I have no idea why I just forgot the man's name. Their primary caretaker is Arthur Parnassus, and they are spending a lot of time together. And Linus is really starting to bond with these children. He's starting to form a bond with Arthur, and that is pretty much what this story is about. For the most part, I enjoyed this story. So one of my favorite things about this story overall is the six children that Linus is spending all of his time with. And the six children we are following is Chauncey, which is this flubber type of character. The funny thing about him is nobody knows what Chauncey is supposed to be. He is just this thing that nobody knows what he is. And he is just this delightful thing is what I'm going to call him. And he is just this young kid that just wants to be a bellhop when he gets older. We are also following this young kid by the name of Lucy, which I believe is short for Lucifer. And he is technically the Antichrist. He is the son of Lucifer. We are following this kid by the name of Sal, who turns into, I believe, a Pomeranian anytime he is frightened. We are also following this, I don't think she's that young, or I think she looks young, but she's actually older than what she is, I think. Her name is Talia, and she is a female garden gnome. We are also following I think she's called like a sprite, and her name is Fee. And then we're also following a character by the name of Theodore, and he's considered like a wyvern. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. And how I'm like picturing him in my head is like this little like bird dragon type of thing. I think that's how I'm like picturing it. But my favorite part of this story was the children themselves. And I loved everything about the children. Anytime we got interactions with the children, it just warmed my heart. And I think that's what everybody loved about this story, was all the interactions that we had with the children. And I actually read this story on audiobook, and I would actually recommend the audio. And the funny thing with that is, when I was reading through quite a few of the reviews on Goodreads, not too many people said that they would recommend the audiobook, but I enjoyed the audiobook and I would actually recommend it. I thought the narrator did a great job, and I think he did a great job when he was voicing the different children. And if you're hesitant about it, if you've read the reviews, I would say listen to the audio. I think he did a great job. But the children were my favorite aspect of the story. And just the different topics that were brought up throughout the story. We have, trying to accept yourself, the things that you would do to protect these children as far as Arthur goes. Like I said, he was the one that is actually in charge of the orphanage, and the things that he goes through to protect these children, because this orphanage is set in this town and the people that are part of the town want absolutely nothing to do with the children. And a part of that, I believe, is because they're afraid of the children and they don't really know or understand these children. So a lot of them not wanting anything to do with them has to do with their fear. So Arthur has to go above and beyond to protect them. And so, it's all about what you would do to protect these children. These people have formed a family, basically. They only have themselves. They're kind of isolated. And that was one of the things when Linus got to the orphanage. He really wanted them to actually go to the town and branch out. He wanted these children to actually experience interacting with not just themselves, but with other people. I really liked the different topics that this book brought up. I liked accepting yourself, accepting other people, loving yourself, protecting each other, protecting your friends, protecting your family, and just being comfortable in your own skin. And this dealt with that wonderfully, beautifully. I could really appreciate how this story dealt with that and talked about it. With that being said, I did only rate this story a 3 stars. I thought the beginning of the story took a little while to get into. I felt like it was a little slow, and I felt like the end of the story kind of dragged a little bit. I felt like it lasted a few pages longer than it needed to. I think the story could have been a little shorter. And I felt like in the middle of the story, some stuff could have been cut out a little bit, and that is probably an unpopular opinion. Like I said, my favorite aspect of this story was anything that had to do with the children. There were times in this book where I felt like we were getting conversations between Linus and Arthur where their conversations were dragged out for way too long. And I felt like they were having the same conversations over and over again. And it just felt really repetitive. And I did not enjoy that. And I felt like it just kept taking me out of the story. So that kind of brought my enjoyment of the story down a little bit. And one of the things I was really looking forward to is the romance between Linus and Arthur, because this is a queer story. We have a male and male romance. And I didn't really feel like we got a lot of their romance until really towards the end of the story. I thought we would see more of a buildup of the romance throughout. And like I said, we didn't get much of it until the end. And I really wish we would have seen more of that. Overall, I did enjoy it. I would still highly recommend it. Like I said, favorite part of this, hands down, was anything that had to do with the children. My 2 favorite characters in this story was Lucy, again, the little boy that was the Antichrist, and Chauncey, who was a little blubber flubber character. 2 of my favorites, and I would highly, highly recommend the audiobook. Whatever you heard about the audiobook, I would highly recommend it. It was amazing. Still a good read. So the next story that I read by TJ Klune is Under the Whispering Door, and this is actually supposed to be released on September 21st, I believe, and I was able to receive a e-copy by NetGalley. And this is the story of our main character by the name of Wallace, who is this workaholic. He's a really not a very nice man. He's not nice to the people that works under him. He was not nice to his ex-wife. He just was not a very nice man. And one day he ends up dying of a heart attack, and he actually wakes up at his funeral. And he is basically, he believes he's kind of like having like an outer body experience. And while he's looking at himself in the casket and while he's attending his own funeral, he notices that one, not too many people have showed up at his funeral, and two, one of the people that is at his funeral is a woman that he has never met before. And so the woman that he has never met before ends up being this woman by the name of May, and she ends up being this reaper, I believe, and she says that she is there to take him to the ferryman by the name of Hugo. And so once she takes him to Hugo, the story kind of takes off from there, and we find out that Hugo is actually meant to help Wallace kind of cross over to the other side. And so the story is basically about Wallace kind of reflecting over his life. So Wallace is realizing basically what type of person he was. He is kind of reflecting over the things that he's done to people, the things that he said to people. He's reflecting over things that he wished he would have done in his life. He is kind of regretting things in his life. And we are following not only Wallace, but we're also following May. We're following Hugo. There's some other characters that actually come to the place that Wallace is brought to. And the place that he's brought to is this tea shop that Hugo and May actually run. And so at this tea shop, there's actually a door that people that are brought to Hugo actually open, and that is where they cross to the other side to. So, like I said, the story takes place primarily at this tea shop, and we are following these main characters, and that's pretty much what the story is about, is following Wallace reflecting over his life. I ended up giving this story a 3 stars. I think the beginning of the story was really strong. It started off with a bang with how it opened up with Wallace and his interaction with one of his employees, and we saw how he was treating one of his employees, and we saw what type of person Wallace was, and it was really insightful, and it really just opened your eyes up to, like I said, what type of person he was. And we saw his death, and you saw how many people showed up to his funeral. I'm not going to tell you how many people showed up, but it kind of makes you think, like, when you die, like, I wonder how many people would show up to my funeral when I die. So that was interesting to me. So that's a whole other thing. But so it kind of opened up your eyes to, you have to be a cruel person for your funeral to look like that, and for people to say the things that they said at this man's funeral. So I was like, wow. So, but like I said, I only gave it 3 stars. I enjoyed it for the most part, but I just kind of felt like the pacing was kind of weird to me. Like I said, the majority of the book took place at this tea shop, and we're just reflecting over his life. And the book obviously deals a lot with grief and how you're dealing with death, how you're dealing with the things that have taken place in your life, how you're handling death, because not only are we dealing with Wallace and how he died, we are dealing with other people that have come to Hugo and they're trying to cross over, but we're also dealing with their deaths and the things that have happened in their past. And so we're dealing with all different types of grief and how people are, coping with that. And I liked how the book dealt with that. But when we weren't talking about that, other things were happening in the story that weren't that interesting to me. So I do think that there were a lot of just slower moments in the story that weren't needed to me. There were some funny moments in this story. We do have a moment where there was a woman who comes to the tea shop to do seances that I thought was hilarious. That's all I'll say about that, but that there's a scene in there with that, and that was freaking hilarious to me. And there's other funny moments. There's a guy, Hugo's grandfather, by the name of Nelson, and they have a little dog by the name of Apollo that are also main characters in the book. He's hilarious in this story. May is hilarious. So I do think that they're all really good characters, and they all bring something different to the story. And I think that was a good aspect of the book, but I just feel like the story was a little long. I think the ending was wrapped up too fast, and I think the ending was a little too convenient. It was wrapped up a little too nicely for me. It was a little too neat. I feel like, both of these books are nice and wholesome. So if you're looking for something nice and wholesome, both of these books are going to do it for you. So, but with this one, I feel like Under the Whispering Door, parts of it were kind of like dark. The tone, you couldn't really tell what the tone of this book was supposed to be. That's what I'll say. So, sometimes the tone was like light and fluffy, and then sometimes the tone was a little darker. So it's kind of hard to tell what the tone of this book was supposed to be. Maybe that's just in my opinion, and somebody is going to think about it a little bit differently, but it was kind of hard to tell what tone TJ Klune was going for with this story. Overall, I still enjoyed it. Like I said, I gave it 3 stars, so I don't think it was a bad book. There were parts of it that I really enjoyed, and some of the parts I just thought were like slow and not needed. But for the most part, I would still recommend it to everybody. I think if you enjoyed The House on the Cerulean Sea, I think you would really enjoy Under the Whispering Door. If you enjoyed the wholesomeness of that one, I think you will enjoy the wholesomeness of this one. So that is all that I have for you guys today, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.